I like to open my door before the light is strong. Morning is gentle then, and the market breathes in a slow, steady way that eases the mind. I walk down the lane with my ledger under my arm, passing the cassava stall and the broom-maker's shed, where thin sticks lean like a fence of sunbeams. Dew sits on the mango leaves and drops, one by one, into the dust. A hen flutters with her chicks, then settles again. There is a clean smell in the air, soap, damp earth, and wood smoke. I greet the ground with my steps, and the day with a quiet good morning, not loud, just enough for my own heart to hear. My shop, Sunrise Shop, sits where the lane bends so you see it as you come and as you go. I gave it that name because the front door catches the first light. The wood is old now, but it has a good voice, like an old drum that has learned to sing without shouting. The counter has a knot on the top that looks like an eye, and the eye has watched my hands for years, counting coins, wrapping salt and sugar in paper, measuring rice with a steady cup, setting aside a sweet for a child who saved his coins one by one. People say a shop is made of goods. I say a shop is made of people. I hold the names in my ledger like seeds in the palm. The pages are worn at the corners where I turn them with care. In those pages are small stories. Ruth, who buys kerosene before the heavy rains because the road becomes a river. Musa, who asks for extra wicks when the days shorten. Benny, who braids hair and likes a certain kind of candle that does not smoke. My ledger knows these things, and so do I. It is my garden of trust. I water it with care. On most days, I open in time to watch the peppers glow red on Mama Sade's table. She wraps her head in a cloth as neat as her rows of peppers. She knows the heat of each one as if she has kept them near her heart. When she lifts her basket, I smell pepper oil and the strength of good work. Ada passes with folded cloth balanced on her hip. Her prints are bright and sure. Blue that remembers the sky, green that knows the deep leaves, yellow that calls to the sun. Old Jonah sets out his tools on a mat and waits calmly for a kettle to cry for help. He fixes things with patience, and sometimes he fixes a sadness with a smile. I grew this shop with my hands and my back. Before Sunrise Shop had a door, it had a table. I remember the first table very well. The wood was rough. It rubbed the skin under my wrist raw by the end of the day, until I learned to place cloth under my arm. I slept behind that table when the roof was not yet strong. I woke at midnight to pull tarps when the rain came sharp, beating the corrugated iron like many small hands. I learned the small slope in the floor that made the right-hand shelf lean. I learned where the afternoon sun warmed the beans nicely and where the shadow kept the sugar dry. These are the quiet lessons that do not come fast. They settle into your bones and stay. You should know about my cousin Kola. We were boys together. We raced leaf boats on the river when the rains were over and the water ran brown and full. Kola made his boat dance. He had a way with his hands that drew attention. He could take a plain bit of palm and make a bird or a fish with a quick twist, and we would clap. He could talk too. Words flowed for him like water. People smiled when he spoke, even when he had not said much. He liked to be admired. There is nothing wrong with liking attention. But as we grew, I saw that he also liked short paths. If there was a way through the grass that looked faster, he took it, even if thorns hid there. He went to the city first, came back with new shoes and stories that sounded like the clatter of dishes and buses. He stood taller, as if the city had stretched him. When he came home the last time, I welcomed him. That is what family does. I gave him a stool behind my counter now and then. He watched me weigh rice with a level cup, watched me tie neat knots in paper. I showed him my ledger and how every name was a promise. He smiled and said, "You keep things neat, cousin." He used my name sometimes as a joke, teasing, "Ayo, give me that pen." "Ayo, pass me the matches." We laughed. I did not know then how he was trying the name on like a shirt. That morning, the sky wore a soft gray blue before it opened wide. I reached my shop and set down my bag for a moment, so I could wipe my hands on the clean cloth I keep. I touched the lock. It did not turn. I turned it again, slow, in case my mind was still in sleep. The metal felt strange, new. My eyes climbed to the signboard. Sunrise Shop sat there in fresh, bright paint. There was my name in bold letters, only it was not my brushwork. I know my hand the way a person knows their own walk. This writing stood proud and sharp, like a person standing on their toes to appear taller. Kola leaned against the door. He wore a shirt the color of ripe guava. He held my old stool with his back as if he had grown up with it there. He smiled, and a small line beside his mouth deepened. I could smell soap on him, fresh and strong, and the faint, sharp scent of paint that had not yet settled. "You are early," he said. His voice was smooth, as if it had been ironed. "Ayo, is it? Good morning." He said my name as if he were trying a trick in full daylight, not caring if we all watched. I felt a heat under my skin, then a cool wind move through my chest. Anger rises fast. Wisdom walks slower, but it still arrives. I set my hand on the door. The wood recognized me. That is a strange thing to say, but it is true. The grain under my palm felt like the ridges of an old friend's hand. I knocked twice and waited. Some mornings, a little waiting saves a day. "Kola," I said. The word was careful and plain. "Open my door." He tilted his head and looked at the painted sign as if he had not seen it before. "Your door?" He tapped the board with his knuckles. "No, this is Ayo's door." He touched his chest lightly. "I am Ayo. Papers show it. We must not quarrel in front of customers." His smile was a lid over hot water. It kept the steam in and showed nothing of the heat below. On the left, Mama Sade slowed her steps. Her basket was full of red and green, peppers bright as coals and cool like leaves. She tied her wrapper tighter and stood, the kind of stillness that listens. Little Teamy with the round cheeks came with his mother. He held her fingers and stretched to see. Across the lane, Ada stopped and shifted the cloth on her hip so it sat easy while she watched. Old Jonah lifted his face from a metal pot and squinted in the early light. I reached into my bag and touched my keys. The metal ends were smooth, shaped by years of turning. My thumb found the small nick on the second key where it once fell and bit the floor. I closed my fingers and felt the weight. Keys remember the hands that use them. My keys did not fit the new lock. I held them anyway, the way a person holds a truth that is not being heard yet. "Kola," I said again. "This is not play. My name is on that board, but your hand painted it. The shelf on the left leans because the floor dips. The second drawer swells when the rains come and it takes a gentle hand to close it. My coins have a notch on one edge so I can feel them when the light is low. What do you truly want?" He held his smile the way a person holds a tray balancing glasses. "Brother," he said, "the market is wide. You can start again. Let me grow this place. I will bring a new way. Music, bright bags, bright talk. People will come," his words had shine. But the shine did not cover the truth. He had changed the lock in the night. He had taken my name to the office where stamps sit in drawers and ink has its own smell. He had found someone to make a paper say what he wanted. He had moved the sign with hands that did not shake. He wanted to stand where I stood without earning the ground. I looked past him into the dark crack of my doorway. Dust motes floated there like tiny stars in a small sky. I had wiped those shelves so many times. I had lined the jars so labels faced front because people like to see what they buy. That morning, the jars looked like someone had turned them just enough to make them strangers. Sometimes a market breathes in and holds its breath. That is how it felt. A grinder started, then stopped. A bundle of broom grass fell with a soft swish. A baby gave a cry and was comforted. Life does not stop, but it can quiet itself for a few moments to make room for a decision. I could have pushed. I could have raised my voice. But one of the elders once told me, "When the house is on fire, you do not run with a candle." I wanted light, not more flames. I turned to the left. "Mama Sadie," I said. My voice carried not because I forced it, but because the market listened. "Please come." She came without hurry, the way a person comes who is used to weighing many things. She set her basket down and let the handle rest against her calf. Her eyes were clear. You know how some eyes show you heat and some show you depth? Hers showed depth. "What is this?" she asked, looking from me to Kola and back. "My cousin stands in my doorway," I said. "He says he is me. He has changed my lock. He has painted my name with his hand. He says paper agrees with him. My keys agree with me. She did not rush to speak. She looked at the sign, at the door, at the keys. She took a slow breath. The market does not like quarrels before noon, she said softly, not as a proverb to wave, but as a quiet truth to hold. We have a way for such things. By then, more people had drifted near, not tight, not pushing, but in a circle that left a respectful space. Ada stood with the cloth stacked square and bright. Rosa from the fruit row came, her pineapple crown like a small green fire above her basket. Two young men who carry loads stopped with their poles leaning on their shoulders. Even the goats, tied short to keep them from tasting everyone's vegetables, chewed and watched with long blinks. Kola lifted his hands, palms facing us, as if to calm a river. Sisters, brothers, he said to the circle, not to me. You know that a shop can sleep if the owner does not keep up. I am a new day. Look at the paint. Look at the polish. I bought the business. The sign says my name. Let us not spoil a morning. He was good with his mouth. He had always been. But I saw his jaw tighten for a second under the smooth words. I saw that his night had not been long. I held my breath for 4 heartbeats. Then I let it out and faced the people who had given me their coins and their stories for years. I will not wrestle here, I said, and I heard my own voice steady. I will not break the peace that feeds us. I ask for our way. I ask for the council to sit under the mango shade. We will bring what is true and they will test it. I will accept what they see. Will you come? Ada nodded, not to me only, but to the air itself, as if agreement was a thing we could all stand on. Old Jonah set his pot down. If a pot leaks, he said in his slow way, you find the hole with water, not with fire. He meant he would come. Others murmured. The market's murmurs are like dry leaves rubbing against each other, small, soft, but full of meaning. Market murmurs. We will call the council at noon, said Mama Sade. Bring your proof. Bring your breath. Leave your anger. Trade needs a clear ground, Kola laughed lightly, too lightly. I welcome truth, he said. I am ready. His laughter did not fit the morning. It was too bright, like a tin pot hung in sun. Shiny, but you cannot drink from it when it is hot. I lifted my bag and walked home. It was not a far walk, but my feet felt different on the ground. Have you known that feeling? The same stones under your sole, the same dust on your heel, and yet you are walking on a thin bridge of care. I passed 2 children drawing a house in the dirt with sticks. Their lines were straight and hopeful. I wish their lines would not ever be crossed by someone else's hands. At home, I washed my face. The water smelled faintly of iron, like a coin rubbed between 2 fingers. I sat and opened the old tin box where I keep the small bits that matter. A ribbon from my shop's opening day. The first receipt I wrote by hand for a woman who smiled and said, "You make it official." And a photo of my father with one hand on my shoulder and the other on a sack of beans. The photo is a little faded. He is not a man of many smiles, but his eyes in that picture hold something warm. I like to think he would have told me to keep my back straight. I took my ledger, the one with worn edges. I held it as a farmer holds a basket of seedlings. It is not heavy, but it carries. I placed my old keys in my pocket. I lifted the small tin of gum I had used last month to steady the 3rd shelf that wobbled. I took the receipt book, not to wave papers, but to show the rhythm of my work. I folded a cloth with a blue stitched edge and put it on top. On it, I have wiped the counter every morning. The blue edge helps me keep one cloth for wet and one for dry. In small things, order makes life smooth. Before I left, I stood still and let the quiet of my small room settle around me. My mother used to say, "Before you go into a storm, drink a cup of calm." I breathed in and out until my shoulders forgot to be high. Then I stepped back into the day. The sun had moved enough that the lane wore light and shadow in equal strips. The smell of stew had begun to lift from the cooking stalls, mingled with the sweetness of frying plantain and the sour-sigh smell of fermenting cassava not far away. The bakewoman laughed loud at something a child said. A goat pulled at its rope, then accepted its limit and chewed again. Life is a bowl with many tastes. If one taste goes bitter, the others still exist. I reached the market early before noon because I wanted to sit under the mango tree and feel the ground there. The mango tree is old. Its bark holds lines like an elder's hands, and its leaves have seen many arguments begin and many end. Sometimes we tie a blue thread around the trunk to call people without shouting. The thread was there now, bright against the rough bark, a thin river of color saying, "Come quietly. We will do this the right way." I touched the thread with 2 fingers. It felt like cotton, smooth, a little dusty. The bell hung low, a small metal bell no bigger than a child's fist. We ring it once to begin. The ring is not harsh. It does not wake fear. It wakes attention. I sat on the low curb and let the tree shade lay stripes on my knees. Children ran, then slowed as they passed, eyes wide. I smiled at them. "Run," I said softly. "Your running does not disturb truth." They ran again and giggled when a sudden wind puffed dust that chased them. I thought of Kola then. I thought of him laughing as a boy when our palm boats tipped and sank. He laughed, then he would kneel and mend with a grass stalk. We did not have many boats. We made them again and again. What changes a boy who mends to a man who takes? Sometimes the road to the city takes more than it gives. Sometimes a person loses their pace and then tries to borrow another's. People began to gather before the bell. The council would come at noon, but it is our way to arrive early so our minds can drop their own noise like a bucket dropped into a well. Ada stood near me and set her cloth on a stool. She wiped the dust from the top piece and smoothed it with a flat hand. "Ayo," she said, not loud but clear. "We all belong to this circle. You are not alone." "I know," I said. My voice came easier in the shade. She looked at the sign above my shop from where we sat. "The paint is too proud," she said. "Your letters used to lead the eye, not jump at it." I smiled a little. "You have a cloth seller's eye," I said. "You can see when a pattern shouts." She tilted her head. "When a pattern shouts," she said, "it is because it wants to hide something." She was not unkind. She was precise. Old Jonas set down his mat and came to stand with us. He rubbed his palm over his short gray beard. "I heard," he said, "that the lock was changed." "Yes," I said. I pulled my keys halfway from my pocket and let the light catch their edges. "These did not speak to it," he grunted softly. "A lock is a mouth," he said. "It learns the language of the hand." He looked at my keys. "Yours look like good talkers." We watched as 2 young men moved the counter out from the shop, setting it closer to the tree so all could see it when the time came. They carried it carefully, as if it were a person. It is only wood, yes, but it holds the marks of many mornings. The knot like an eye glinted. The drawer slid a little and 1 coin made a thin, bright sound before it settled. I knew that sound. It is the sound of a coin with a small notch near the edge striking wood. I closed my eyes for a moment and saw my own hands moving without fuss, greeting, counting, tying. My hands were calm. My chest was not yet. Kola came then, walking with a lightness that did not match his eyes. He had shaved close, and the shaving had left a faint shadow on his jaw. He looked at the counter where it sat, then at me. He nodded, not a greeting, not an apology, a mark between one heartbeat and the next. "Brother," he said, and the word stretched, trying to cover things it could not cover. "Cousin," I said back, keeping the word small so it would not be strained. He leaned against a stump, crossed his ankles, and watched the people take their places. He liked crowds. He always had. Crowds were water for his words. But his fingers were not still. He rubbed his thumb against the side of his forefinger, and the skin there reddened. Noon came nearer. The sun moved, the shadow of the mango tree shifted slowly like a hand turning a page. The market did not stop. A child cried because his sweet fell in the dust. His mother brushed it, then said, "No, another one will come another day." A dog pointed its nose to the breeze and sniffed for something frying. A bicycle bell rang twice, careful, and then once more in apology. In the midst of this common life, we built a circle for truth. I thought of what I would say when the bell rang. I did not plan speeches. I planned the order of the things in my hands. The ledger first, to show the curve of my work, the keys next, to show the shape of my days, the tin of gum last, to show the way my fingers had known the third shelf's small wobble. This is how I have learned to make sense of trouble. Put your quiet facts in a line as simple as shells on a string. To the west of the tree, I saw Auntie Mercy walking toward us. People stepped aside for her without fuss. She is not taller than most, but space grows around her when she comes. Her hair is silver under a white cloth, and her face has the softness of a person who has met joy and sorrow often and speaks kindly to both. She led the midwives for many years and sat by many bedsides, at beginnings and at endings. People trust her because she does not make her voice big to make herself feel big. She lets the truth be the truth. She greeted me by touching my forearm lightly, the old way that says, "I see you," and I bowed my head a little. She did not need to ask what had happened. She had already heard enough to know where to start. Other council members came too. Baba Idris, who keeps the scales honest. Ada, who would sit today not only as a seller but as a person whose eye misses nothing. And old Jonah, who knows how to patch a hole without tearing the cloth around it. Auntie Mercy looked around the circle, then up at the leaves. She reached for the bell, but she did not ring it yet. She waited until a child finished laughing and a woman finished a sentence. Then she lifted the bell and touched it once. The sound went out and came back, like a bird flying a small circle. Quiet bell note. "We are here," she said. Her voice was not high, not low, steady, the way you would talk to a new baby. "We will keep our words simple. We will open our ears. We will not pile wood on a fire that does not need more. We will let the market breathe." Kola stood taller. He flicked his chin, almost a nod. He was ready to pour his words. He liked to pour first. But Auntie turned to me. "Ayo," she said gently, "tell us how your shop began." I stepped forward, not far, only enough so my voice would meet the circle evenly. I set my bag down on the counter. I touched the knot in the wood. It felt like a blessing. "Before this counter," I said, "there was a table. Before the table, there was a cloth on the ground. Before the cloth, there was a thought. I wanted to sell simple things in a clean way. I wanted people to leave with something useful and a feeling that they mattered. I slept behind my table for 2 months. When rain came, I moved my goods. When a wind lifted the paper wrappings, I learned to dampen the cloth and lay it over, to keep the light things from flying. I learned to count with my mouth closed and my eyes open, because the market is full of sound, and you must not add to noise unless you are a drum in a song." A small smile moved around the circle. Auntie nodded. "Go on," she said. "I built the shelves with the carpenter's help. The left shelf leans because the floor dips. We tried to fix it, but the house is old, and sometimes you live with small tilts. The third shelf wobbled. I fixed it with gum." I held up the small tin of gum. "My ledger," I raised it, the cloth cover worn at the corners, "holds names that trust me. I will not read amounts. Dignity is also a kind of coin. My keys," I held them up, the sun scratching a line across their teeth, "fit this door until last night. The drawer where I keep the small coins has a notch cut in one coin, so when the light is faint at the end of the day, I can find it by touch. I know the crack in the backroom floor. It runs like a river with 2 bends. I sweep around it so my broom does not catch. I did not speak to hurt Kola. I did not look at him. I looked at the wood and at the faces of people who had been kind to me many times without anyone calling it kindness. Ada nodded once, her face thoughtful, as if she felt the weight of each word. Old Jonah rubbed his hand along the counter's edge and made a small, satisfied sound in his throat. Baba Idris bent and peered at the drawer, not touching, just letting his eyes make friends with the grain. Kola did not move, but his fingers had stopped rubbing. The skin on his forefinger had turned pale where he had pressed. "We will test what can be touched later," said Auntie. "Mercy." She turned to Kola. "Cousin." She used the word that gives dignity without choosing a side. "What do you say?" Kola cleared his throat softly. His words flowed. "I saw a chance to lift this shop higher. I can bring music. I can bring bright bags and better display. My papers, he touched his pocket. Put the name with me. The market is wide. There is room for both of us, he said it smoothly. But the smoothness did not remove the rough place where the lock had been changed at night. It did not fill the gap where a cousin's face should have been when the door was painted with a new hand. We will test, Auntie said, and her tone made the word cool. We will not rush. The market owes that to itself. We will begin soon. She lifted the bell slightly, then set it down again. Let us breathe before we begin. There is a certain hum that comes when people agree to behave well. The hum came then. People shifted to make room for the latecomers. A child was lifted from the ground and placed on a hip. Someone handed a cup of water to someone else. The mango leaves made a soft clapping sound in a small wind. I felt my shoulders loosen for the first time that morning. I stepped back and sat on the low stool someone had placed near the counter. I ran my palm over the blue-edged cloth. The stitching caught a little under my skin. I thought of my father's hand on my shoulder in the photo. I wondered what he would have said. Perhaps he would have said, "Stand like a tree. Let the wind pass. You do not need to break to show that you are strong." Kola looked around the circle, not restless but measuring. I knew that look. He was measuring where his words could land, where his charm could find easy soil. But the ground in the circle was different. It had been swept clean for truth. It would not grow quick weeds that day. There is a proverb, Ada said softly from her seat, maybe to herself, maybe to all of us. Truth is like oil. It rises. She did not say it to swing it like a stick. She said it the way you say, the sun will set, as a fact we could trust. No one argued. We did not need long speeches. We needed steady hands. We needed good eyes. A soft drum touched the air from somewhere beyond the stalls. Not a call to dance. A heartbeat. It is a way some people mark time when words gather. It keeps the mind from jumping. Quiet drum heartbeat. And this is where I will say to you, listener, as you sit with me under this tree in your mind, have you waited for a moment like this? The moment when fairness puts its feet down? It is a fine tightrope to walk. You do not want to fall into anger. You do not want to fall into surrender. You walk between one breath, one step, one steady line of sight. The bell waited. The council sat with their hands quiet on their knees. The market stood in a wide ring, respectful and ready. Kola and I stood not far from one another, but we were on very different ground. I felt the ground under me firm as the old boards of my doorway. I do not know what Kola felt. His face had gone plain, the way a person's face goes when he is not sure which of his many faces to wear. The sun moved a little, and the light slid from the edge of the counter. The knot in the wood was in shadow now. It looked like a closed eye, resting before it opened again. I closed my eyes too for a moment and held in my chest the quiet, the faces, the smell of pepper, the weight of keys, the laugh of a child, the tie of the blue thread around the tree. These are the things that make a life steady. When I opened my eyes, I saw Auntie lift the bell again, lightly, not to hurry, but to begin. Her fingers did not shake. Mine did not either. We were ready. The tests that would follow would not be cruel. They would be simple. They would ask our hands what they knew, ask our feet where they had stood, ask our voices who we greeted when the day began. In that there is fair measure. In that there is kindness. It is the kind of kindness that does not ignore a wrong, but also does not crush a person. It lifts the truth to the surface and lets us all see our own faces clearly, so we can decide how to carry them. I looked once more at Kola. I thought of the two boys by the river with their palm boats. I thought of the short paths he had always liked, and the small ways I had tried to show him that long paths, though quiet, end in better places. I did not know yet what the council would decide, but I believed in the weight of little honest things. A cup leveled with a finger, a coin with a tiny notch, a crack in a floor that you learn and live with, a name carried by steady work, not paint. No one spoke as Auntie touched the bell. The sound went out and came back and hung softly in the leaves. Noon had become a place, not a time. The market was our witness. The mango tree was our roof. The ground under us was our floor. We were ready to walk the right path. We were ready to find what belonged to whom. We were ready together to teach and to learn. The bell chimed once, thin and clear under the mango leaves. The sound did not rush. It settled on shoulders and eased tight jaws. Shoes shifted on the swept earth. Cloth whispered. A baby stopped fussing to listen. That is how a good beginning sounds. Auntie Mercy lifted her hands just a little. We will keep our eyes kind and our minds sharp, she said. We will weigh words, but we will also weigh what hands can do. This is not a quarrel. This is a search for the true path. Her smile was not a smile to win favor. It was a soft light so we could see one another clearly. She pointed to the counter that two young men had placed near the tree. Bring it here, she said, where everyone can watch. They moved it into the center. The counter faced the circle as if it had waited its whole life to stand and speak. The knot that looks like an eye now watched all of us. The drawer, when touched, gave its small wooden sigh, a familiar sound to me, like a friend clearing a thoughtful throat. "Io," said Auntie, turning to me with the gentle firmness of a teacher calling a student by name. "Stand where you usually stand." I moved behind the counter. The shade held me. My feet found the board's worn place where I always stand. My hands relaxed. They rested on the top edge the way they do in the first calm minute before a day gathers speed. "The market," Auntie said, "will choose 3 buyers. They will ask you for what they usually ask. Do not perform for us. Work as you work. We will watch." Ada stepped first. Her claws lay folded at her stall, but she came with her hands free. She stood tall and straight, with a face that knew patience. "1 bar of soap," she said, "the kind that holds its shape in hard water. A bundle of black thread. Change for a large note. I had no time for small ones this morning." I reached for the soap with the fingers that had learned, long ago, to tell 1 bar from another by the resistance under the nail. I cut it with the smooth wire kept under the counter, wiped the wire on the blue-edged cloth, and wrapped the soap tight. I took Ada's large note without frown or fuss, counted the change with quiet care, small notes first so she could spread them into different pockets. I placed the bundle of black thread on the counter with the soap. "For your hems," I said, because that is how she uses it. We have spoken of hems and loose ends many times. She nodded once, the way she does when something fits. Old Jonah's son came next. Shoulders strong, eyes with the same slow kindness as his father's. "A cup of salt," he said, "and a bit more for good luck if your hand is generous." He said it with a shy smile. I scooped the salt with my level cup. I pressed the top flat with my finger, so the measure would not be proud. I tapped the cup softly to let grains settle, poured into paper, and rolled the paper tight. Then I added a pinch. Not a joke. Not a handful that would break the measure. A pinch that says, "I see your long days." He grinned. Next was Mama Sade. 2 cups of rice, she said, and 1 sweet. She glanced over her shoulder. A small girl peeked from behind her wrapper, eyes like new seeds. I scooped the cups, added a little extra, not careless, but generous. I reached under the counter and brought out a sweet that I keep for days like this, the small round one with a lemon tang. The girl's eyes widened. She stepped out and reached with care. "For your birthday next week," I said. She nodded solemnly, as children do when their joy is too precious for too much movement. Auntie watched, eyes narrow, but not suspicious. Focused. She turned to Cola. "Your turn," she said. "Work as you will work." He moved behind the counter with a smoothness that shows he has stood behind counters in other places. His shirt had no speck of dust. He faced the 3 buyers. "You again?" he said lightly, trying to turn us into a small stage. He held out his hand to Ada. "The large note, please." She gave it. He counted fast, the notes clicking. He paused, then redid the count, returning change that looked right to quick eyes. Ada did not react. She tucked the money into her cloth with her usual neatness. It was Ada, not the counsel, who said gently, "He returned 1 small note too much." She placed it on the counter. It was not an accusation. It was a stitch in the seam. Cola's face held its calm. He nodded as if he had planned that. "Thank you," he said. He measured salt for old Jonah's son. He reached for a scoop, the wrong one, the one set aside for beans. The first measure was light. He shook the cup to add. Grains spilled loose, a salt fall that made a bright, soft sound against wood. He shrugged, smiled, poured again. To the girl, he held up a sweet, then switched it for a smaller one with a playful wink. The girl's mouth turned down, though she tried to keep the brave face she had learned from older eyes. Kola laughed softly as if to invite us to laugh too. No one did. Enough, said Auntie. Not sharp, but clear. Now we will ask the shop itself to speak. We will ask Memory to stand with us. She turned to me. Io, close your eyes. Open the drawer with your left hand. Find the coin with the small notch near the edge. I closed my eyes. The drawer's slide breathed. I put my fingertips into the coins the way you put your hand into a bag of seeds, not to grab, but to feel. Metal has different temperatures. Edges hold stories. I moved slowly. I felt ripples, straight lines, smooth faces, and then the notch, a tiny broken line where one coin had kissed a stone long ago. I lifted it, eyes still closed, and placed it on the counter. I opened my eyes. The notch caught the light. A few people smiled, small, proud smiles, as if the coin had remembered us all. Kola, said Auntie, your turn. He closed his eyes with care, as if closing eyes were a new skill. He opened the drawer too wide with a quick hand. The coin shifted and clinked in a way that sounded like a small herd of goats startled. He touched, picked, swapped, brought out a coin. He opened his eyes and placed it down. It was smooth. He looked at it. He did not reach to correct his mistake. He said nothing. That was a small dignity. Now we will ask the wood, said old Jonah from his stool, voice warm. It knows who has leaned on it longest. Auntie nodded. Where is the shallow bowl along the counter made by coins and palms meeting in the same place for many days? I ran my fingers along the edge and stopped where the wood dips, the place where my hand has slid coins to palms. I pressed my thumb into it. The wood remembered me. Here, I said. The word came soft. Kola ran his hand along too, his palm flat. He moved past the place twice, then came back. He paused vaguely left of the dip. Here, he said, uncertain. His eyes asked if we would let hope be enough. We would not be cruel, but we would not be careless. Let the back room speak, said Ada, folding her hands in her lap. Where does the floor crack run? Show us with your shoes. Do not speak. Walk it. A hush moved through the ring. I stepped around the counter, into the space marked as the back room with a length of rope. Someone had drawn the crack with a piece of charcoal as it looks. The tube bends like a river that has to go around old stones. I placed my foot at the threshold with the care of Memory. I walked the line slowly, feeling the idea of the floor under my feet as it exists in the shop, where the broom bristles catch if you rush, where a small grain of rice finds the lowest place. People watched not my face, but my feet. When I reached the corner, I placed my heel in the final bend. I was not performing. I was doing something I had done 300 mornings. Kola copied my steps. He walked with confidence at first, then stopped where the first bend turns. He hesitated, then chose the wrong side, stepping into a space where, in the real room, a narrow box sits to hold extra paper. He made a small, frustrated sound, almost like a breath through teeth. It is all right, said Auntie softly. We learn what we know. We learn what we do not know. She lifted the small tin of gum that I had placed on the counter earlier. Who put this under the third shelf to settle a wobble? Everyone knew the answer, but she asked it so the small truth would sit in the circle like a guest offered a chair. I did, I said. Where did you keep it? She asked. Under the counter, left corner, behind the folded dry cloth, I answered. She reached and found it exactly there. She held it up for all to see, not as a trophy, but as a small lamp. And now, people, said Baba Idris, voice even. Names are part of a shop. A ledger is part of a shop, but also the way a voice lands when it greets. Auntie pointed to 3 elders, Baba Oho with the well-digger's shoulders, Mama Ruth with her small cloth purse tied neatly, and Grandmother Fola, who comes rarely but buys matches with the fingers of a person who has always managed fire. I stepped out. To Baba Ojo, I bowed my head and said, "Well, master, the ground still listens to your touch." He gave a small snort, pleased. To Mama Ruth, I said, "Strong mother, your candles are in the cool place, the ones that burn clean." Her eyes softened. To Grandmother Fola, I said, "Firekeeper, your matches are the dry kind." She nodded once, the nod of one who has kept many homes warm. When Kola followed, he said, "Good afternoon, sir." "Good afternoon, Ma." He meant respect. He did not know their names in the market's mouth. It was not wickedness. It was distance. Auntie Mercy let a pause sit. Even the leaves seemed to hold their place. Soft night wind. She looked first at me, then at Kola. "We are not counting how many things you did right and how many wrong," she said. "We are listening for a pattern. We are looking at the road your feet have walked." She turned to the council. "We have seen with our eyes. We have weighed with our hands." She tilted her head toward the crowd. "If someone has a question to ask that carries respect, let them ask." A thin man from the spice stall raised his hand. "I ask only this," he said. "Did Kola take any coins while the lock was changed? It is not a trap. We need to know who must be paid back." Kola's mouth opened, then closed. He stared at the counter. When he looked up, his face had no tricks on it. He nodded once. "I sold in the morning before you came," he said to me. "I did not sleep much that night, and I wanted to stand as owner. I made small sales. I kept the money." He swallowed. "I can count it. I can return it." The market did not murmur loudly. The sound was a slow rustle, like dry grass shifted by the smallest wind. It was the sound of relief that someone had chosen to speak plain. "Thank you," said Auntie. "That is a beginning." She placed her palm flat on the counter's edge, then lifted it. The imprint of her hand's warmth would fade, but we all saw it. "There is a proverb," she said with a smile that did not ask agreement. "Truth is like oil. It rises." She let the words sit for a breath. And another. "When the roots are deep, the tree does not fear the wind." She asked Kola gently, "Would you like to speak before we decide?" He took a breath that puffed his shoulders, then let it go slowly. "I went to the city," he said. "I worked in shops where the music was loud and the bags were bright. People called me clever. I liked that feeling." He glanced toward the sign above my door, then back to the ground. "I came home and I saw this place steady and loved. I felt a hunger. I thought I could step into Ao's print and be taller right away. I forgot that a name is not a hat you borrow." He looked at me, not long, but enough. It was wrong to change the lock. It was wrong to write his name with my hand. I did not want to ask. I wanted to be seen. His words did not wash away what he had done, but they washed some dust off something inside him so we could see it better. Auntie turned to me. "And you?" she asked. "What sits in your chest?" My door felt like it had forgotten me for a moment, I said. That hurt. I did not sleep long last night either. But my anger is a small bundle. I can carry it without dropping it on anyone. I want my work back. I want the market to rest. I want my cousin to find a path that is his. I do not want to break him. We stood with our small truths between us like two baskets. The council listened. Auntie spoke with the other elders in quiet voices. They did not take long. They were not careless, but they did not pretend confusion where there was none. She turned back to the circle. "This is our decision," she said. Clear. The shop and the name returned to Io. We do not say the name is his because paint says so. We say it because work says so. The lock will be changed back by evening, and the keys will sit in the hand that has worn them smooth. She looked at Kola, not down on him, but directly. "There has been harm. We will not answer harm with harm. We will answer with repair. You will return all money that passed under your hand while the lock was changed. You will count it in the sunlight, not in shadow. For 30 market days, you will make amends with your time and your back. You will repaint the sign under Io's eye, not to put your mark, but to restore what was disturbed. You will sweep the walkway in the morning so feet meet a clean path. You will clear the drain when rains begin, so water does not carry away our coins and our patience. You will carry loads for our elders who ask, and you will carry them without asking for pay. For 2 weeks, you will join the night watch to help the market sleep without fear. She lifted her hand slightly toward me. Io, you will receive what returns to you without triumph. A win that dances on a brother's wound is a loss. If you choose to let Kola stand beside you for a time to learn the slower ways, that will be a gift, not a price. If you choose not to, we will not call you hard. Her words settled among us like seeds. You could almost hear where each one would sprout. I felt my chest open as if the air had new room. I nodded, not fast. I accept, I said. The words came calm. Kola nodded too. His throat moved. He did not think wildly. He did not argue. He said, I will do as you say. The line beside his mouth deepened. He looked smaller and also more solid. Good, said Auntie. We are not interested in shame. We are interested in repair. She touched the small bell once. The sound flowed like cool water and told the market, we can stand down now. We can go back to our day. Market murmurs. The ring loosened. People moved away, their steps respectful, slower than they had come. Old Jonah reached for his mat and placed his pot exactly where it had sat in the morning. Ada lifted her cloths. She smoothed the top one with a motion that felt like a blessing. The young carriers picked up their poles and turned to the work that would buy their food later. Children burst into play again, laughter like beads dropped into a wooden bowl. I stayed near the counter for a while, touching the edge with a finger, only a finger, as if to say, I am still here. The mango leaves scratched little patterns in the sunlight. A goat sneezed. Kola stood 2 steps away, eyes on the ground, then on the counter, then on my face. I will count the morning's sales, he said. I will return them to you before the sun drops. I will find the painter to help me with the sign. I will come early to sweep. We will change the lock together, I answered. I will hold the screws. You will turn them. He smiled, a shy, sudden smile that made him look young again. I will turn them slowly, he said. We did not shake hands then. We did not clasp shoulders. We did not need a ceremony more than the one we had. Sometimes the day itself is the ceremony. I went to my doorway and placed my palm flat on the wood. The board was warm now. It held the sun from the last hour. It felt like a heart. I could almost hear it. Quiet drum heartbeat. Open for the afternoon, said Ada as she passed, her tone light with relief. And sell me that thread again. The first bundle thinks it can roll away in my basket. We laughed, a small laugh, the kind that loosens the spine. I lifted the latch. The door swung, and a thin line of dust lifted like silk. My nose caught the smell that sits in my shop forever now. Soap, iron, a sweetness from sugar, and the clean, dry smell of the blue-edged cloth. I set the ledger in its place, as if it had been out playing and had now returned home. I wiped the counter with the damp cloth, then with the dry. The blue edge showed me which was which. It is the simplest system, and it works. The afternoon moved gently, the way a river moves after a rain when it has more to carry but knows where to go. Customers came in pairs and alone, with lists in their heads and a few coins folded into palms. We spoke softly. We counted slowly. The market had that bright after tears feeling. You know it? When the air seems new and the colors seem crisp? It felt like that. More than once, someone met my eyes and held them a second longer than needed. Those looks said, we saw, we stood. We will hold you if the wind comes again. I did not need to talk about it. Their looks and my small nods were enough. In the late glow before sunset, Kola returned with a small cloth bag. He opened it on the counter, not behind his back. He counted the morning's coins in neat lines, speaking the amounts so the air could hear. He paused only once when a coin rolled and wobbled on its rim. He caught it with a finger and placed it flat. This is all of it, he said. If I have forgotten a sale, I will ask the buyers tomorrow and add it. Thank you, I said. I did not caution or warn. I let those 2 words hold their shape. He stayed as the light thinned. He brought tools. We took the new lock off. We put the old one back. Screws squeaked, then settled. The door seemed to stretch and sigh. It is a strange thing to feel a door sigh, but I felt it. We stood with the keys in my hand. I opened and closed the door twice. The click was the old click, the one that fits in my ear like a familiar note. "Tomorrow," Kola said, "I will bring brushes and the right paint. We will fix the sign. I will sweep. We will be here," I said, meaning both the shop and myself. He nodded and went toward the night watch to receive his whistle and his instructions. He walked with a straightness that surprised me. Quiet, not quick. Sometimes a person's whole body changes a little when they decide to tell the truth. The sun slid, and the sky held a thin pink along the low clouds. The mango leaves went dark, and the day shifted its weight from one foot to the other. I counted my coins by the doorway where the light still lay, not hurrying, not delaying. I locked the door with the lock that knew my hand. The key turned with a soft, final voice. I slid it into my pocket. On my walk home, the ground felt familiar again. The stones were the stones I had known. The children drew their houses in the dust with their sticks. Their lines were straighter now. Maybe it was the same. Maybe it was my eyes. My steps remembered their own rhythm. At night, I sat at my table and opened the ledger on my lap, not to count, but to look. The names lay like rows in a garden at dusk, each row promising a harvest if tended. I thought of the council, of Auntie's hands, of Ada's watchful eyes, of old Jonah's quiet grace, of Baba Idris's straight measuring. I thought of the market women and men who held the circle steady so we would not break. We all had made a bowl with our attention, and the truth had sat in it without spilling. I slept deeper that night, not because I had won, but because fairness had stood up and did not wobble. The sound of the night watch whistle came once from far away, then twice. It was a comfort. Kola's whistle would be one of those. He would walk the lanes while we slept. He would see the market quiet. He would hear pots settle with a tiny click. He would hear goats shifting their small feet. He would listen to the sigh of tarps. He would carry our rest, the way the market had carried him that afternoon without pushing him down. Before dawn, I woke and lay still for a while. I listened to the soft wing of a night bird returning to its place, to a rooster taking his job too seriously, to the low first voices of baker and brewer. In that soft space, I let a small hope form. Not a big bright hope that blares, a steady hope that ties knots well. I hoped my cousin would keep his promise to repair. I hoped I would keep my promise to accept his repair with quiet respect. I hoped the market would keep our way for the next time someone's step went crooked. Because there is always a next time. That is life. The mercy is that we can be ready. Morning came. The light felt like clean cloth on the skin. I rose, washed my face, and reached for my keys. They lay where I had set them, calm as old friends. I held them tight for a breath, then let them hang easy from my hand. I stepped out, and the lane met me like a path I had known since childhood. As I walked, a thought arrived. The council had given Kola 30 market days of amends. 30 days is not a punishment measured in pain. It is a month of practice. In 30 days, hands can change. Eyes can learn new ways to look. A name can settle onto the shoulders that will carry it. My own name had been heavy once. I had learned to carry it slowly until it balanced. Maybe he would learn that balance too. At the market, the mango tree shone a little wet with dew. The blue thread still hung, but someone had retied it tighter so it would not drag. The bell rested, its quiet metal cool in the morning shade. The sign above my door still held the proud paint from the night, but the promise to repaint sat like a soft shadow over it. Kola stood by the door with a bundle of brushes under one arm and a small tin of paint in the other. He did not wave. He did not call out. He waited until my eyes met his, then he nodded. That small nod said, "I am ready to work." I unlocked the door. The click was a welcome. The smell inside greeted us. Dry wood, soap, and the faint sweet from sugar and sweets. We set the counter back in its place. The knot's eye looked up and went content. I wiped the top once, twice. Kola unfolded a piece of sandpaper and touched it to the sign's wrong paint, then stopped. "Where do we start?" he asked. "From the edge," I said. "We do not scrape the name as if we hate it. We clean it as if we mean to write it right." He nodded again. We carried the sign down together and leaned it on 2 stools. He sanded gently slow circles, dust rising in tiny spirals like soft smoke. I stood beside him and held the board steady. The market began to wake, and the waking sounds came around us. Voices greeting, a broom's first strokes, a rooster nearby negotiating with the sun. The day before had been a hard turning. This day was a beginning. Work hummed. That hum is the best sound I know in a market. It is the sound of hands doing what they know, and minds not rushing, and hearts remembering we belong to one another. By mid-morning, people had drifted by to see the sign come clean. No one jeered. No one celebrated. They watched the simple work of repair. It is not exciting, but it is holy in a small way. It tells a story without shouting. At midday, Auntie Mercy passed, a basket on her arm. She did not judge the sanding. She did not praise it either. She placed a wrapped packet on my counter. "Yam and stew," she said. "Eat while it is warm." Then she tilted her head at Kola. "For both of you." She walked on without waiting for thanks. That is how goodness often moves, in and then on, without taking up too much air. We ate in turns, one sanding while the other took a few bites. The stew tasted like home, pepper warm but not harsh, oil with a shine, yam soft as comfort. It sat well. Food is a kind of vote. That meal said, "We want you to have the strength for this work." In the afternoon, Kola walked to the walkway with a broom. He began to sweep from the center out. He stopped when he saw the dust drift back to where he had not yet cleared. He looked up. I pointed gently to the far end. "Start from the edge," I said again. He smiled once at the repeating lesson and began at the edge, and the dust moved away in a clean, straight line. He found a rhythm. He made the earth neat for feet. The day leaned toward evening. The sign was ready for new paint. The letters would be the same as before, not louder, not bigger. We would paint them with an even hand. But that would be the next day's work, when the wood had rested. As I drew the door closed at sunset, the last light struck the sign where it leaned, and the dust sparkled like a blessing. I touched the blue-edged cloth again and folded it so tomorrow it would lie smooth. I closed the lock with the key that knows my hand. When I stepped away, I saw Kola talking with the night watch at the mango tree. The captain of the watch, quiet, broad, kind, showed him the route and the little things that matter, how to listen for different steps, how to speak to a sleepless child, how to greet a dog. Kola listened with a respect I had not seen often on his face. He took the whistle and the small torch. He did not spin them. He held them steady. I went home in the gentle blue that comes before dark. I passed the children putting their sticks away. One of them asked, "Who owns the shop now?" His mother answered before I could. "The one who opens it with the right key," she said, "and the one who greets me with the name I like." The child nodded, satisfied with this kind of answer, the kind that holds a picture in it. I smiled and walked on. That night when I lay down, a soft wind moved through my room. It smelled of dust and far water. I thought of the day, of the bell's single clear note, of the tests that were simple and kind, of the words that did not rush. I thought of my cousin, his hands sanding, his back bending a little as he swept, his steps that would soon circle the market without haste. I closed my eyes and slept, trusting the night watch, trusting the old mango tree, trusting the way our market had chosen, because we had chosen the long path. We had chosen the path that fixes what is broken and keeps what is whole. It takes time. It takes patience. It is not dramatic. But it lets children draw straight lines in dust. It lets elders walk without fear. It lets names sit on the right shoulders. And in the morning, it lets a door open with a sound that makes the heart say yes. At first light, the sign leaned on two stools like a patient waiting for a gentle doctor. We had sanded yesterday's pride away. The wood had gone quiet again. Kola stood with the brushes, his sleeves rolled. His face held that careful look a person wears when he wants to do right and knows he must move slowly to get there. "Even strokes," I said. "Letters that look as if they are standing with their feet on the ground." He nodded. He dipped the brush, let a drop fall back into the tin, and then touched the wood. The first line was steady. The second matched it. He paused, not to show off, but to breathe. We painted together in the cool hour. The smell of fresh paint curled around us, clean, sharp, hopeful. A rooster called, not loudly, as if he too wanted to keep the morning soft. Ada walked by with her folded cloths. She stopped and watched the brush move. "Do not let your hand lean when you write the name," she said to Kola. "A name should sit upright." He smiled, a small, respectful smile. "Yes," he said. He straightened his wrist. The letter lifted. The line settled. The name returned to where it belonged, not a shout, not a whisper. A right-sized voice. When the last letter dried, we lifted the sign together. We raised it slowly and set it straight. The mango leaves above made a shadow that touched the wood, a blessing without words. People paused and looked up. No one clapped. No one needed to. The quiet itself said, "Good." Kola swept the walkway with a new rhythm. He had learned to start at the edges and bring the dust toward the center where the broom could carry it away. At first his strokes were short, then longer, then even. He made a path for feet. When an elderly woman came with a basket, he stepped in with both hands and lifted the weight to her stall, not in a rush, not lazy, just steady. "Thank you," she said. He nodded and returned without looking around to see who had noticed. The rains came on the fourth day in a clean rush. The smell of wet earth rose like a memory from the ground. The drain slurped and then clogged with leaves and a strip of paper that had escaped. Kola was already at the edge with a flat stick. He skimmed the leaves, pushed the paper along, lifted the grate, and set it down without clang. The water found its way again, clear and brown, carrying little bits where they should go and not where they should not. He wiped his hands on an old cloth. Rain dotted his shirt. He laughed once, not loud, because the work had felt good. On the seventh day, Auntie Mercy walked through with a basket of limes and small ginger roots. She paused in my doorway and let her eyes travel, from the counter, to the blue-edged cloth folded and waiting, to the simple letters on the sign, to Kola bent with a broom. She did not praise. She did not advise. She set 3 limes on my counter. "For your water," she said. "For clear thinking." She turned to Kola and placed a piece of ginger in his palm. "For strength that does not rush." Then she left us to our tasks. The market women taught in small ways. Their lesson was not just the council's words. It was their daily eyes and their daily ways. Mama Sade showed Kola a pepper and said, "Red is not always hottest. Look at the skin. Feel the weight." Then she pointed to a man with careful steps. "He buys only on Fridays. Do not greet him with big talk. Greet him with a short nod and have his small change ready." Kola listened. The next Friday he nodded at the man in the right way. He had a small handful of coins warmed by his palm ready. The man's face softened. He paid and his shoulders dropped a little. Tiny burdens no longer carried. Ada gave Kola a strip of torn fabric. "Fold this into a pad for the shoulder when you carry loads," she said. "If you carry without the pad, you will be strong today and sore tomorrow. We need you strong tomorrow." He folded the cloth and slid it under the bundle as he lifted. His back thanked her quietly. Rosa from the fruit row taught him to stack pineapples so that their crowns did not bruise each other. "Leave space," she said. "Not every kind of closeness is kind." He nodded, and I saw the idea settle, not only in his hands, but in his eyes. In my shop, I held steady to the slow work of trust. I measured, I counted, I greeted. I showed Kola small things when he asked and kept quiet when he needed to find them himself. He learned to wipe the counter with the damp cloth and then dry it fully. He learned the exact twist that closes a paper packet of salt so it does not leak by supper. He learned to feel a coin's edge without looking and to tie a bag of sugar in a knot a child can open without tears. These are small arts. They hold a life together. On the 10th day, he made a mistake. He took 2 heavy loads at once, each bigger than he could carry well. He wanted to prove. Halfway, one bundle slid and bumped the ground. Nothing broke. Nothing spilled. But the bump echoed into faces. He set them down and stood, breathing fast. I watched him. He picked one bundle back up with the padded cloth in the right place. He carried it to the stall. Then he came back for the second, as if that had been the plan all along. He did not hide the sweat on his face. When he returned the next morning, he rubbed his shoulder and grinned. 2 loads make a bigger mistake, he said quietly. 1 at a time builds a day. The lesson had settled without sting. On the 12th day, he walked the night watch last, near the time when the moon was thin and the air cold on cheeks. He told me later, "I heard the market sleep." He described it like a man telling a secret rite. The small tick of a cooling pot, the breath of hens, the distant hum of a road, a child's sigh, the whisper of leaves. He said, "I felt like I was carrying people's sleep in my pockets." He kept walking, careful not to spill it. On the 15th day, a man from another town came and tried to buy on credit with a big smile. Kola looked toward me. I did not nod. I did not shake my head. He faced the man and said, "We give credit when we have a thread to tie it to." He smiled, not mocking. "We do not have a thread yet." The man shrugged, then paid with cash he had kept hidden. When he left, Kola leaned on the counter, and we both breathed out at the same time. We laughed a little, quiet, the laugh of people who had walked on a narrow board and not slipped. On the 18th day, a woman dropped her last coin by my door, and it rolled toward the crack in the floor. Before panic could rise, Kola bent, slid the coin with 2 fingers, and brought it back smooth. He handed it to her and said, "It would have been recovered anyway. This crack is a river with 2 bends. Everything that falls into it ends up at the corner." He looked at me, and we both smiled at how far that sentence had come. From my mouth to his, not as a borrowed thing, but as a shared truth. On the 20th day, rain returned, softer. We worked under tarps with the rhythm that comes to hands after many storms. Kola kept the drain clear without being told. He carried a basket for Baba Oho and did not hurry the elder's steps. He waited. He matched the older pace. He said later, going slower beside him did not make the day shorter or longer. It made it right. He was learning to measure time in another way. On the 22nd day, Auntie Mercy paused, checked the painted sign, touched the edge with a finger, and looked pleased. She pointed at Kola's broom. "Keep your broom dry," she said, "and it will serve you twice as long." He propped it with its bristles up, out of waste water, and he smiled at the small wisdom, because it felt like a secret of the craft he now shared. On the 24th day, we had a moment that could have turned sour. A youth laughed at Kola and called out, "How does it feel to sweep for the cousin you tried to become?" The remark felt like a thrown stone. The air tightened. Kola stopped. He looked at the youth, then at the broom, then at the ground he had made clean. He said calm, "Sweeping has taught my hands. I am honored to learn." The youth looked away, confused by an answer that would not break into more noise. The market exhaled. Lesson held. On the 26th day, in the heat of afternoon, Kola carried water to 3 stalls without being asked. He poured carefully, refilled the jug from the public tap, and returned it to its place. Small kindness done twice begins to be a habit. It is not a loud habit. It is a steady one. On the 28th day, he miscounted, caught it, corrected himself, and returned the extra without being told. He adjusted his own work. He did not announce it. That is when I knew the council's lesson had moved from his head into his bones. On the 30th day, the council gathered again, not with a bell this time, but with light faces. The mango tree cast lace of shadow on the ground. People drew near in a circle, loose and happy, the way you draw near when you expect to hear good and you are ready to be part of it. Auntie Mercy carried a small flat bundle wrapped in cloth. She greeted us all and touched the bell anyway, one soft ring for tradition's sake. Quiet bell note. "We asked for repair," she said. "We saw repair. We asked for labor," she added, "and we saw labor done with care. We asked for money returned, and we saw money counted in the open. The walkway is clean, and so is our sleep." She looked at Kola. Thank you for keeping your promise. Kola bowed his head. He did not make a speech. He said, "Thank you for giving me a path to walk." Auntie opened the flat bundle and pulled out a plain, hardbound book. The cover was blank, the pages clean. She held it as if it held more than paper. "A ledger," she said. She lifted it toward Kola. "It is empty because it is yours to fill. Not with borrowed work, with your own. If you choose to open a table, or a stall, or a shop, let this book carry your clean record. Let it be the weight that holds your promises in place." He took it with both hands, palms open, the way you accept a newborn or a truth. His eyes shone. "I will begin with small things," he said. "Matches, string, sweets. A table, a plank. I will not paint my name until the wood knows my hands." I felt something loosen inside me again at those words, something that had been held in reserve. I stepped forward and touched his shoulder. "When you choose the plank," I said, "I will walk with you." We walked that afternoon to the carpenter's shade. The carpenter ran a hand over a length of wood and said, "This one," in his slow, trusted way. Sawdust lifted in bright motes like gold and then drifted down. Kola paid what he could. He promised the rest as labor. The carpenter nodded. The market believes in payment, yes, but it also believes in a promise you can see. We carried the plank back, simple and straight, and set it on 2 clean blocks in a sunny corner near the tailor's stall, where morning light will help early customers see. Kola's ledger sat on the plank, the first page open to air. Not a word in it yet. A hope full of space. That evening, the market women came with small gifts. Not big, not noisy. Ada brought a narrow ribbon, the color of soft dawn. She tied it to the back edge of my counter with a careful knot. "We tie this because we are tied to one another," she said. "When the wind tugs, this ribbon will remind us." The ribbon touched the wood and made a whisper sound. It was not a flag. It was a reminder. Mama Sede handed Kola a short broom, new, its straw tight and crisp. "This is not to make you sweep more," she said, smiling. "This is to show you have swept well." He nodded and held the broom like a tool and like a symbol. "Truth is like oil. It rises," Ada said softly, more to the ribbon than to us, as if giving it a sentence to keep. She did not need to say the other proverb again. We could feel it in the roots of our tree, in the ground under our feet, in the way our backs felt when we stood straight without strain. Days after that moved the way good days do, on strong, ordinary feet. In my shop, I returned fully to the old rhythm. I wiped, I greeted, I counted. Children's faces peeked over my counter. Elders rested their hands on the wood where the small hollow sits. A woman came with a story about a new baby. A man came with news of a harvest on the far side of town. I sold a bar of soap to Ada and 2 cups of beans to a girl who was learning to cook. Don't you love how a market holds so many stories at once without dropping them? I do. Kola's table grew little by little, not tall, not wide, but with a dignity you can recognize even from far away. He stacked matches and sweets in neat rows. He measured string and cut it with a steady hand. He learned prices and he learned faces. He folded his blank ledger open every morning and closed it every evening, with a handful of words written between. He did not rush to fill the pages. He wrote carefully, letters like small bridges, each carrying its weight without wobble. He came to my counter sometimes in the early light to borrow a scoop or to ask a question. He brought it back clean. He listened. He shared small news. Once he brought me a paper packet he had folded that did not leak a single grain when turned. "I finally made one that holds like yours," he said, more proud than loud. I shook it gently by his ear. It held. He grinned, then laughed the way he used to laugh by the river when a leaf boat made it all the way to the bend. One morning, he stood in my doorway and did not speak. He looked at the sign, at my hands, at the blue-edged cloth. "I am sorry," he said at last. He said it plain, with no sugar, and then he let the words settle. We both let silence sit like a bowl between us. Silence can hold forgiveness better than noise. I put my hand on the counter. "I know," I said. We did not embrace. We did not make a scene. We went on working. Some things are healed best by doing. In time, he painted his name on his own small plank. He made the letters even. He did not make them large. He had waited until the wood knew his hands, just as he promised. The morning he hung it, he looked to me, not for permission, not for applause, but to be seen. I nodded, slow and glad. That was enough. Sometimes people who were not there on our first day asked about our story. They had heard bits. They wanted to know the ending. I never gave them a speech. I told them small pictures. I said, a bell rang once. We served 3 customers. We found 1 coin by touch. We walked the crack on the floor with our feet. We returned the lock to its old click. We tied a ribbon. We gave a broom. He opened a ledger. People smiled when they heard that. They could see it. They could carry it home. The season turned. Mangoes ripened and fell with soft thuds in the afternoon heat. Rains thinned. The air grew light and then heavy again in the cycle we all know. The market grew and rested and grew again. Children I had seen in slings now walked with small bags in their fists. Elders who had stood in my door now sat on stools while their daughters bought for them. The mango tree stood. The blue thread was untied and tied again for other reasons, other days. The small bell shining in shade called us, not often. But whenever we needed the reminder that we can find the path that does not bruise our hearts. If you ask, did the market women teach my cousin a lesson? I will tell you this. They taught him without shaming him. They taught him with the weight of early mornings and the kindness of clean tools. They taught him with the shape of a broom, the edge of a ribbon, the slow instructions of ordinary days. They taught him with the test that invited his hands to speak. They taught him with balance and with calm. They taught him because they love the market, and they love what is fair. Their love is not loud. It is steady. It is how we stay whole. And what did I learn? I learned that when someone tries to wear your name without earning it, you do not pull the name off in anger like a hot shirt. You invite the day to hold a mirror. You ask your community to watch, to listen, to test. You hold your work in your hands and let it speak. You accept repair when it is offered. You keep your back straight without stiffening your heart. One evening, late, when the last customer had left and the light stretched thin between the stalls, Cola came to sit on my step. We watched the road. We watched the dust settle. We watched the ribbon lift in a small wind and fall again. Do you hear it? I asked. Hear what? He said, smiling. The market's heart, I said. We listened. It was there. A soft rhythm you might miss if you rush. The clink of a last coin. The whisper of cloth. A laugh inside a stall. A footstep slower than the rest. The bell, unmoving, holding its own silence. The leaves above us rubbing like careful hands. It sounded like a promise kept. We rose and locked our doors, the old click in my hand, the new, honest click in his. We walked toward home, side by side, not touching, but close enough to share the same air. The sky held one bright star. The market slept safe because we had chosen wisdom when it was hard. We had chosen truth when a lie looked shiny. We had chosen patience when anger felt easier. That is the lesson I carry. That is the lesson we all earned together. And in the morning, when I stand in my doorway and the first light sits on my counter, I wipe the wood with the damp cloth, then with the dry, and I whisper a small blessing to the day. May we keep our names by our deeds. May we find our way with calm. May our hands continue to show what our mouths do not need to say. If you were beside me now, I would give you a lemon sweet and point at the 2 bends in the crack on the floor. I would place your hand over the shallow bowl on the wood that many palms have made. I would let the market speak to you as it has spoken to us, softly, clearly, and fair.